Hello there, welcome to Planet America. I'm John Barron.
And I'm Julia Baird.
Great to have you back with us, Julia. Welcome.
So good to be back.
And what a week to be back as well. Kamala Harris has accepted the Democratic Party's presidential nomination in Chicago.
But not everyone was happy. We'll see Trump's reaction, and we'll also talk to one of the pro-Palestine delegates who was denied a voice by the Harris campaign. But first...
The 2024 Democratic Convention came to a close last week, and Chicago's United Center is now being prepared for the Blackhawks ice hockey season and an ELO concert. Democrats, though, will be feeling pretty good about the ratings, beating the rival Republican convention last month by an average of almost 3 million viewers per night. 14% viewership bump, if you don't mind, for the DNC. Kamala Harris also drew more eyeballs to her speech than Trump could just days after he survived an assassination attempt. Harris attracted 28.9 million viewers, 500,000 more than Trump's peak audience. His speech was also more than twice as long as Harris's. As for whether you thought Harris gave a good speech, that very much depended on, well, who you are and what coverage you tuned into.
You're going to remember where you were on this night. This is an inflection point in history.
It was the culmination of a coronation that started with a coup.
If you're a dictator on the world stage right now, you should be very, very nervous that this woman is going to be in the White House. She is going to be a tough partisan defender of freedom.
This speech, I thought, was a complete disgrace.
So, the DNC done and dusted. Julia Baird, what stood out to you?
Well, the speech was very carefully calibrated, as of course was the whole convention. But did you notice, whilst the GOP convention featured stereotypical macho imagery, Kid Rock, Dana White, Hulk Hogan ripping open his shirt?
Was enough! And I said...
The DNC had people talking about their mothers and the values they taught them: decency, hard work, compassion. Michelle Obama's mother, Marion Robinson.
The woman who set my moral compass high and showed me the power of my own voice.
Who Barack Obama likened to his own grandmother. Both, he said, strong, smart, resourceful women, full of common sense.
They knew what mattered. Things like honesty and integrity, kindness and hard work.
And Kamala Harris's mother, Shyamala Gopalan, who her daughter described as a 5-foot-tall, tough trailblazer.
She taught us to never complain about injustice, but do something about it. Do something about it. She also taught us, and never do anything half-assed. And that is a direct quote.
While many women and some men in the centre were clad in what has become known as suffragette white, and speakers like Hillary Clinton spoke of what the first black female president would smash.
In the highest, hardest glass ceiling.
And headlines like these abounded. For women of the DNC, nomination of Kamala Harris is deeply personal. Harris' female forebears were clearly there as symbols of both values and authority. But Harris did not specifically mention her gender or her race. Now, since Biden's resignation, feminists have been concerned about whether celebrating a possible first black woman president would be fraught during the campaign.
How much might it undermine how qualified she is as just being the right person for the job right now?
Now, it is a massive, potentially historic deal, but...
Just talking about the representative firsts isn't enough.
Where it did seem Harris' gender was most relevant was when she spoke of threats to reproductive rights, with an authority Joe Biden had struggled to muster.
One must ask, why exactly is it that they don't trust women?
It is a very good question indeed to ask. Let's have a look at how the polls are tracking this week. And the average of national polls, well, it's hardly shifted from before the convention. But the other measure of success for a convention is the money. And the Harris campaign has announced that they had their best fundraising hour right after the Harris speech, nearly $40 million. And that post-convention, that has brought the Harris campaign's fundraising total to $540 million, and that is in just over a month since Joe Biden dropped out. While the Democratic Party largely came together behind their nominee last week, Divisions did remain over the Biden-Harris administration's handling of the war in Gaza. Angered at the president's support for Israel, earlier this year, pro-Palestine activists pushed a campaign for primary voters to write in uncommitted on their ballots rather than vote for Joe Biden. And 30 uncommitted delegates were seated at last week's convention.
But unlike literally dozens of other speakers, including the parents of Israeli hostages, the uncommitted delegates were denied podium time at the DNC, so they staged a number of protests inside and outside the convention hall. Now that's a political risk for Democrats because hundreds of thousands of pro-Palestinian and Arab Americans live in crucial swing states like Michigan, and Democrats can't afford to lose their support. Asma Mohammed was one of those uncommitted delegates, and she was part of those protests in Chicago. She's with us now from Minnesota. Asma, welcome to Planet America.
Yeah, hi, thank you for having me.
Asma, can you explain to an Australian audience why you were demonstrating at the DNC last week?
Yeah, so it didn't really even start out as a demonstration. I was one of 30 uncommitted delegates at the DNC, or the Democratic National Convention. And we were uncommitted because we had not yet decided on, in our primary, who to vote for. So way back in February, March, and April, we had our Democratic presidential primaries. And during that time, I helped run a campaign in Minnesota. That was an uncommitted campaign. And I started a protest vote against President Biden's handling of the war in Gaza. So last week we showed up, 30 of us were uncommitted, but then as we were there, we were talking to Harris delegates and talking to them about a ceasefire and an arms embargo, and over 300 Harris delegates joined us to become ceasefire delegates, and they called themselves ceasefire delegates. So our biggest asks, of course, are a ceasefire and an arms embargo, because we want the war in Gaza to stop. We want them to stop killing babies. That's like our core ask. But the smaller ask, we set another really low bar for the DNC, really, was to have a Palestinian American speaker on the main stage, because they'd had a family of Israeli hostages speak. And so we thought, in our Democratic National Convention platform, it says that Palestinian lives and Israeli lives are valued equally. So we wanted to have that shown on the main stage. We were told for 2 months, so this is like not a new ask, we were told for 2 months that, it wasn't a yes, it wasn't a no, people were working on it and they would get back to us. Same thing this last week. And then finally, on the eve of the last day of the convention, they called us at 8 p.m. and they said no. And they said it wasn't the DNC themselves, so not like the convention conveners themselves, but it was the Harris campaign that did not want a Palestinian American on the stage.
So why do you think it was that the Harris campaign denied you that speaking slot? Were they just worried about a possible controversy?
So we sent them a long list of speakers that, state representatives, we have a member of Congress. We sent them a list of speakers that they could choose from, that they could vet themselves. They were vetting all of the speeches. And we talked to all of the speakers, and nobody even called them to ask if they were interested. So they never really engaged in the process in good faith, which is really frustrating. And then we had the speech that we were going to have. One of the speakers, her name is Ro Roman. She's a Georgia state representative, and she shared her speech. And in her speech, she actually endorses Vice President Harris. So there was nothing like unfitting that went into the speech. It was very clearly like, I'm a Democrat. Here's what we need to do to unite. And also, like, we need to be saving Palestinian lives. There was nothing in the speech that was controversial. And so it was, again, just frustrating. And so we sat down on Wednesday night, literally. I mean, we sat down in front of the United Center, myself and like a bunch of other uncommitted delegates. And we're like, we're not moving until we get a different answer. And they refused to give us a different answer.
So why do you think the Democrats made that decision?
There are a lot of theories. It really doesn't make sense to me because the bar was so low, and we got support from members of Congress who came and visited us while we were sitting down and doing our sit-in. There were senators, there were actually even hostage families saying we should be hearing from a Palestinian American on stage. This doesn't make any sense. So it didn't make any sense to really anyone. And I think that they lost like core members of the base. So it was something that we were seeing, like we were thinking like, let us help you win in November. Let us help you show that you are a united campaign, that you can bring in voters from all different backgrounds. and they missed an opportunity. And so that was something, as a lifelong Democrat who organizes for Democrats up and down the ballot, it was really hard for me to think that they intentionally missed this opportunity.
So Kamala Harris has previously said to protesters that if you want to see Donald Trump elected, you should just keep talking. How do you respond to the idea that by protesting Harris, you are supporting Trump?
Yeah, I would tell them that I've been doing this for much longer than them, first. And secondly, what I am trying to do as a lifelong Democrat is to win against Donald Trump in November. I am a visible Muslim woman. You could never catch me wearing this at the Republican National Convention. This is my political home. The Democratic Party is my political home. So I'm trying to make it possible for other people who look like me, other people who want a ceasefire, who want an arms embargo, to be able to come in and be like, this is my party. And the base really does want this, right? So we are saying this is the way to defeat Trump. We are giving a gift to Vice President Harris by saying this is actually what's going to win over voters in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, in Virginia, all states that they're worried about because they're swing states, right? And if we're really worried and concerned about the swing states, then we need to be focusing on the voters there. And the campaign has shown again and again that they're not a concern.
So, Asma, at this stage, what do you anticipate is going to happen there on November the 5th? Uncommitted voters on the Democratic side simply going to stay at home now?
Yeah, I mean, and I want to make it clear that our movement has been multiracial, multi-generational, multi-faith. And I've been in this movement because I care about saving lives. And there are people who are not going to show up in November because they want to support a campaign and a candidate that does save lives. They don't want to be party to genocide, and that's part of what people are feeling right now. And I don't begrudge them that. Like, I know that that's a really difficult decision to make. And there are other people who are saying, well, there's only one way to defeat Donald Trump. We are in a binary voting system, and it's Harris or Trump. So make your decision. And there are people pushing back on that. So I think on November 5th, if there's no ceasefire, if there's no arms embargo, there were almost 1 million voters, uncommitted voters from across the nation, from, again, multiracial, multi-generational, multi-faith, in key swing states. If they don't show up, it's our election to lose. And that terrifies me because I've lived through one Trump presidency. I do not want to live with another under my belt. And I would hope that the Harris campaign is willing to listen and is willing to choose voters over a foreign military.
Asma Mohammed, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Julia.
Of the almost 29 million people who tuned in to watch Kamala Harris speak at the end of the DNC, one in particular was not impressed. Donald Trump used Truth Social and X-Twitter to give a running commentary.
Please welcome the Democratic nominee for president, Vice President of the United States of America, Kamala Harris.
Here she comes into the arena. I'm getting ready to be fair but critical of comrade Kamala Harris.
And to Coach Jim Walz.
Walz was an assistant coach, not a coach.
Thank you. I grew up immersed in the ideals of the civil rights movement. My parents had met at a civil rights gathering, and they made sure that we learned about civil rights leaders.
A lot of talk about childhood. We've got to get to the border, inflation, and crime.
Thank you all. To lower the cost of everyday needs like health care and housing and groceries.
Why didn't she do something about the things of which she complains?
One must ask, why exactly is it that they don't trust women?
Is she talking about me?
Thank you. God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you all.
I thought it was non-specific and weak, with no fracking, crime, inflation, or anything else of interest even mentioned. Delivery was a C+, with far too many and speedy thank yous at the beginning. It was weird.
Former President Trump did a lot more than just hate-watch the DNC last week and send a few angry tweets. His campaign also scheduled a series of policy speeches and themed events over the course of the week. The attempted focus on policy came after plenty of Trump allies had been calling on him to lay off the personal abuse, including this warning from Senator Lindsey Graham.
I think he's a kook. I think he's crazy. I think he's unfit for office.
I'm sorry, Julia, that keeps happening. You're playing the wrong clip. This is the right clip.
Donald Trump, the provocateur, the showman, may not win this election.
He is indeed a provocateur. Trump was asked as well what he thought of Lindsey Graham's free advice.
Look, I like Lindsey. I don't care what he says, okay? Lindsey wouldn't have been elected if I didn't endorse him. So, you know, South Carolina, Lindsey's my friend. But if I didn't endorse him, he would have had no chance of getting elected.
Not that encouraging, but the Trump campaign did try and put the focus on immigration and border security with a visit to the border wall at Montezuma Pass in the battleground state of Arizona.
So thank you very much, everybody. It's a very sad time for this country in many ways. You had a candidate. I was no fan of Joe Biden, but the way he was taken out was a coup. He got 14 million votes, and the person running now got none.
So he didn't exactly start on topic, but after a while he did get around to talking about the border wall.
All of that plank and all of that very expensive wall, it's also got tremendous electronic capability inside of it. It's got wires for cameras and everything else that you can have. It's the Rolls-Royce of walls, I can tell you.
But it turns out that Rolls-Royce of walls was, in fact, built during the Obama administration. Trump did spend $11 billion building 450 miles of border wall along the 2,000-mile border with Mexico, just not that part of it where he had the photo op. Trump also held a rally in Glendale, Arizona, where he managed to incorporate some policy into his attacks on Harris, denying that his plans to impose sweeping tariffs on imports amounts to a tax on American consumers.
And nobody lies like her. She's a liar. She makes up crap. She's the one going to raise. You know, she said Donald Trump is going to raise. You know why? She said I was going to raise it. Because I'm going to put tariffs on other countries coming into our country, and that has nothing to do with taxes to us. That's a tax on another country.
So Trump says a tariff is a tax on another country. But that's false. According to the Tax Foundation, when America imposes tariffs on, say, Chinese products, US businesses directly pay import taxes to the US government. The foundation concluded that American firms and consumers were hardest hit by the Trump tariffs as a result of higher prices for a wide variety of goods. And a study by the US-China Business Council concluded that the tariffs that Trump imposed back in 2018 reduced US economic growth and employment and cost America 245,000 jobs. So far, Donald Trump's legal woes, though, have not been much of an electoral liability for him. Some of his indictments have seen his polls actually go up, although his conviction on 34 felony counts in June did see him briefly fall behind Joe Biden. So, as of today, we really don't know what impact a grand jury decision to re-indict Trump on 4 felony counts in the Washington, D.C. election subversion case will have. This subsequent indictment, unsealed today, was secured by Special Counsel Jack Smith, recalibrates the existing case against Trump in light of the Supreme Court's ruling last month that concluded that presidents enjoy sweeping immunity. So this case is moving forward, for now at least. It won't go to trial before the election. If Trump wins, he can then order his Justice Department to drop the whole thing. If Harris wins, the case, which alleges a conspiracy to defraud voters, will continue to hang over Trump's head, as does potentially prison time.
Right. Now the on-again, off-again presidential debate seems to be on again, we think. Former President Trump has been accusing Vice President Harris of trying to back out by changing the rules to stop the candidates' mics being muted when their rival is talking.
Would you want the microphones muted in the debate whenever you're not speaking?
We agreed to the same rules. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. I'd rather have it probably on, but the agreement was that it would be the same as it was last time. In that case, it was muted. I didn't like it the last time, but it worked out fine. They're trying to change it. The truth is they're trying to get out of it because she doesn't want to debate.
So Trump said he was happy to not be muted, but it turns out his campaign managers were not. CNN reporting that Trump's advisors would like for the microphones to be muted. The Harris campaign had a theory as to why that might be.
Trump's handlers prefer the muted microphone because they don't think their candidate can act presidential for 90 minutes on his own.
And they say Harris is
ready to deal with Trump's constant lies and interruptions in real time. Trump should stop hiding behind the mute button.
Then, earlier today, Trump announced on Truth Social,
I've reached an agreement with the radical left Democrats for a debate with Comrade Kamala Harris. It will be broadcast live on ABC Fake News by far the nastiest and most unfair newscaster in the business on Tuesday, September 10th. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the rules will be the same as the last CNN debate.
So we're good to go, right? Maybe. We'll see if the Harris campaign agrees.
Yes, I think we'll know for sure at about 9 p.m. on the 10th of September, in all likelihood. Meanwhile, former Democrat turned independent presidential candidate Robert Kennedy Jr. has suspended his White House campaign. The nephew of the late President John F. Kennedy, who has falsely linked vaccines to various medical conditions and promoted conspiracy theories like that the CIA assassinated his uncle and his father, Senator Robert Kennedy. Well, RFK Jr. has a new theory. He's the victim of a Democratic Party plot in cahoots with the mainstream media to censor him. Kennedy says that he is suspending his campaign because polling suggests that he could actually be a spoiler and siphon away enough votes from Trump in battleground states to hand victory to Harris, which he does not want.
In my heart, I no longer believe that I have a realistic path to electoral victory in the face of this relentless, systematic censorship and media control. So I cannot in good conscience ask my staff and volunteers to keep working their long hours or ask my donors to keep giving when I cannot honestly tell them that I have a real path to the White House.
And then Kennedy formally endorsed Trump.
This decision is agonizing for me because of the difficulties it causes my wife and my children and my friends. But I have the certainty that this is what I've meant to do.
His wife, Cheryl Hines, reportedly said she would divorce him if he endorsed Trump. Still, this endorsement comes in return for an unspecified Trump administration role. Kennedy's running mate, Nicole Shanahan, has suggested that he'd do an incredible job as Secretary of Health and Human Services, although the HHS Secretary does need to be confirmed by the Senate, which could be a bridge too far even for them, because this all seems to come back to Kennedy's unscientific beliefs about the causes of chronic disease.
If I'm given the chance to fix the chronic disease crisis and reform our food production, I promise that within 2 years, we will watch chronic disease burden lift dramatically. We will make Americans healthy again. Within 4 years, America will be a healthy country.
So Bobby's all aboard the Trump train, yet Kennedy was keeping his options open. As recently as 2 weeks ago, he was still trying to meet with Vice President Harris to see if she might give him a cabinet job instead. She refused to talk to him. So now Robert Kennedy Jr., once a crusading environmental lawyer, has endorsed this guy.
All of this with the global warming and that, a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax. I mean, it's a money-making industry, okay?
We will drill, baby, drill.
I'm not a big believer in man-made climate change.
It's been said before, but politics does indeed create strange bedfellows, Julia.
It so does. And stranger still here, Robert Kennedy Jr. also says he can still win this election and become president.
I want everyone to know that I am not terminating my campaign. I am simply suspending it and not ending it. My name will remain on the ballot in most states. I encourage you to vote for me. And if enough of you do vote for me, and neither of the major party candidates win 270 votes, I could conceivably still end up in the White House.
Kennedy's campaign and endorsement of Trump has created plenty of problems in what remains of Camelot. His sister, Kerry, says it's a betrayal of everything their father, the late Senator Robert Kennedy, stood for.
If my father were alive today, he would detest almost everything Donald Trump represents. His lying, his selfishness, his rage, his cynicism, his hatred, his racism, his fascist sympathies.
Also not a fan of Trump, Robert Kennedy Jr. in 2018, when he wrote an essay for Newsweek in which he said, Trump's presidency has not just discredited our nation, but the entire American experiment in self-government. And according to a recent text message exchange with a friend published by The New Yorker, Kennedy said Trump was a terrible human being, the worst president ever, and barely human. He is probably a sociopath. Still, a person can change their mind. Take Trump himself. This is what he thought of Kennedy just a few months ago.
The fact is, he is a radical left person. So Republicans, get it out of your mind that you're going to vote for this guy because he's conservative. He's not. And by the way, he said the other night that vaccines are fine. He said it on a show, a television show, that vaccines are fine. He's all for them. And that's what he said. And for those of you that want to vote because you think he's an anti-vaxxer, he's not really an anti-vaxxer. That's only his political moment.
So in April, Kennedy wasn't anti-vax enough for Trump. But more recently, the pair talked and they seem to have had a meeting of minds. Trump, who has no medical training, shares Kennedy's unscientific doubts about vaccines and has a few theories of his own.
I agree with you, man. Something's wrong with that whole system. Yeah. And, and it's the doctors you find. Remember I said I want to do small doses. Small doses. When you feed a baby, Bobby, a vaccination that is like 38 different vaccines, and it looks like it's meant for a horse, not a 10-pound or 20-pound baby. It looks like you should be giving a horse this. And do you ever see the size of it, right? It's this massive. And then you see the baby all of a sudden starting to change radically. I've seen it too many times. And then you hear that it doesn't have an impact, right?
But definitely not endorsing Trump. More than 200 Bush, McCain and Romney alums who have endorsed Harris for president. They acknowledge plenty of honest ideological disagreements with Harris and Walz, but describe the alternative as simply untenable.
So, as RFK Jr. has suspended any serious hopes of becoming president, we'd like to pay this tribute to his incredible campaign.
I'm here to declare myself an independent candidate. I need my speech.
You said, quote, there's no vaccine that is, safe and effective. Do you still believe that?
I never said that.
So, stop me. We have the clip.
There's no vaccine that is, safe and effective.
So you did say it.
You can't read anything. You can't read anything.
Presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. drawing attention today after confirming reports doctors found a dead worm in his brain.
Democratic White House contender Robert Kennedy Jr. blaming the CIA for assassinating his uncle.
Confession from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. that he once left a dead bear cub in New York's Central Park.
I said, let's go put the bear in Central Park and we'll make it look like he got hit by a bike. It'll be funny for people. It's upside down.
It's upside down. It's upside down.
It's upside down.
The thinking on your end behind getting an emu for her daughter early in the dating process.
It was the perfect gift.
He would just chase people around and terrify them and try to peck them.
The RFK Jr.'s daughter, she recalls him using a chainsaw to behead a dead whale.
I'm asking you about whether or not it's true that you ate a dog.
Robert F. Kennedy. He is also known as someone who has blamed vaccines for autism, antidepressants for school shootings, and recently said, quote, he won't take sides on what happened on 9/11. And do you agree with that statement?
Well, of course I don't agree with that, Kristen.
Don't worry about that. That screen right there.
Okay.
That's your whole speech right there.
Okay. I wouldn't eat a human. I wouldn't eat a monkey. And I wouldn't eat a dog.
we're going to miss that guy. But that's it for another trip to Planet America. We'll see you back here at the same time next week, 9:30 p.m. on ABC TV and anytime you like from 9 p.m. on ABC iView, YouTube and Facebook.
And Planet America's Fireside Chat returns this Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern on ABC News.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.